the intention of this work is to start living the life we want to live, and this means living according to our true core values and beliefs. Usually, when we first try to do this, there are many different parts of our personality that try to get in the way. These parts are reacting to the childhood stories that are attached to the negative schema that exists within our personality system. These are the schema that trigger an emotional state that our parts then start frantically trying to cope with. And believe me, when we take on the responsibility of addressing these childhood stories, it can be an extremely distressing thing to do. So, before we actually start exploring the negative emotional experiences, I want to introduce you to what is probably the most important skill in the dialectical behaviour therapy distress tolerance skills training program, and maybe even the most important skill in dialectical behaviour therapy, period. A skill that's known in the world of DBT as stop. If you're one of those people who are asking the question, why is stop the most important skill in DBT? The answer to this question is really quite simple, because it's the gateway into accessing every other skill that we want to use when making behavioural changes. Without it, we get activated by our emotional state and we go bounding into distressing situations without the ability to take stock of what's actually going on. We're automatically reacting to the sense of emotional suffering that's present in our internal world by using modes of behaviour that are simply a representation of the childhood reenactment that we're currently playing out. We'll get into why this is a little bit later on, but for now, all we need to know is that this is down to the schema that's active in our system. These childhood stories cause parts of our personality to have the perception that we're sitting in a space that is a well-known and extremely familiar state of individual crisis. The stop skill helps us to refrain from acting impulsively based purely on the current emotional state that we're struggling with. This overwhelming emotional state is, for most people, predominantly related to some sort of fear. And when we enter into this fear-based system, we're now in what is commonly known as a state of fight or flight. Now, if you've spent any time on the social media platforms connected to the Liberation Place, you'll have a decent understanding that when in this reactive state of being, we usually, but not always, make really poor decisions, which often results in us making a difficult situation way worse than it might have originally been. The stop skill supports our system by helping us to resist the urge to act on the first impulsive behaviour mode that enters into our thoughts. It does this by teaching us how to actually stop dead in our tracks, take a step back and use the skills of mindful breathing so that we can slow the situation down. From there, we can observe what's happening both externally and, more importantly, internally, so we can describe this new internal state, which allows us to cognitively diffuse from the blended part of our personality system. This opens the possibility for us to gather information about what's actually going on, rather than the story we may have inaccurately generated, and then we can proceed from a mindful perspective by evaluating the most effective option to take, given what it is that we're trying to achieve in the situation we're currently in, continuing to live according to our true core values and beliefs. We use the stop skill whenever we find our system shifts in a direction that takes us away from our own specific emotional baseline. Practicing mindfulness builds awareness for this emotional starting point. It provides us with the ability to spot the early warning signs that we're blending with an emotionally reactive part, because when we're blended with these parts, we usually find ourselves acting impulsively without the ability to think things through. When we have this impulsive child reaction, we don't have the time to use the skills that a healthy adult might use to get us into a safe and protected place. Without the healthy adult, there is no state of wise mind, and without the state of wise mind, there is no sense of self-energy in our system. And if you've learned anything about the multiplistic personality at all, you'll know that this is not a good spot for us to be in. In order to get ourselves out of these difficult and sometimes scary situations, the first thing we need to develop is our ability to stop these impulsive child reactions. This is the intended purpose of the stop skill. This essential piece of skills-based education is taken straight out of the Dialectical Behaviour Therapy Skills Training Manual. And as with many of the skills in DBT, the use of mnemonics is an important thing to get our head around. Each letter of the word has a very specific meaning. It provides us with reminders for the steps we need to take that line up with what it is that we actually need to do. When using the skill effectively, the stop skill consists of the following sequence of steps. Sure, if if you really take the time to think about it, you've probably experienced many times in your life when taking a step back this way has led to an effective outcome in what seemed like a difficult situation for you to deal with. If you spend some time discussing your past experience of this with the people in your support network, they're probably going to give you examples of their own experience of this too. The evidence for the effectiveness of this skill is actually all over the place. It's just learning how to use it that's the problem we usually face. When it comes to implementation of the stop skill, it takes practice, 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 and when you think you've practiced it enough, practice some more. The problem is, if you wait until you really need to use the stop skill in order to practice it, you won't be able to access it because it's not ingrained in our behavioural responses as a habitual thing to do. This is a bit of a conundrum with many of the behavioural changes that we're trying to create, so we have to develop ways to rehearse the use of these new skills during times when we don't need them, so they will be there when we do. I do this by setting reminders in my phone to check in with myself multiple times in a day. Then, when the alarm goes off, I simply stop, take a deep breath, and ask myself the following question. If I have the time, I document this by putting pen to paper, and in the PDF that's attached to the page that's linked to this video, there's a short worksheet that highlights these questions for use when the alarms that we've set go off and remind us to practice the skill. I'll leave some links in the description below to that particular page. I highly recommend setting these alarms in your personal phone at random times throughout the day, right now, so you don't forget to do it later. Practice this every single day and it will lead to you beginning to recognize your own emotional baseline. This in turn will help you to notice when things begin to shift, and the earlier in the process that you can spot this, the better the results of using this skill will be. If you take a look around my YouTube channel and the pages of my website, you're going to find a lot more videos that highlight this and all of the other skills associated with dialectical behavior therapy. And as always, if you like the content of this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and turn on those notifications for all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. I hope this video was helpful in building your understanding for the most important skill in DBT that we call stop. Thanks for watching, see you again soon, take care, be safe and be well.